Hello, everybody. Welcome to Talk About House. I'm Todd.
I'm Juana.
Okay, so today we're going to talk about affordability, headwinds in the housing market, and then a bunch of stuff that's happened recently with interest rates, things like that.
And we are not going to make me do math in public again.
Why? I had wanted to do this very simple math problem, which she nailed. She's like 4.5.
There you go.
And then I gave her another math problem. It was like substantially harder. If she had to divide 350,000 by 78,000, it's 4.5.
Right.
And if you watched the video yesterday, though, that's the ratio of income to home prices in 1950 versus today. So we'd found this chart that looked funky, but then when we did the math, the income to home prices are basically the same.
Right.
So
if that's interesting to you, go watch the previous video. If not, stay with this one. Cool video. We got lots of interesting things to talk about.
Lots of stuff. Okay, this article just came out. It says affordability headwinds in the housing market will persist, economists say, and then it says right below it, current rate on the 30-year fixed mortgage is 7.19%. Now, mortgage rates have dropped just a little bit in the last couple of days since the Fed came out and said they're going to hold rates constant, and then maybe one more rate change, and then 2 or 3 next year, probably, right?
Right.
But so we're going to go through a bunch of issues, but let's first talk about 30-year fixed mortgage rate. These rates that are quoted are these conventional rates, which are Fannie Freddie products. Mm-hmm. Fannie Freddie products are the most expensive loan products. Why is that? You would think, like, why are these government service agencies that were created to take loans and sell them in the secondary market, why are their rates so damn high?
So the government's helping you?
Okay, FHFA is helping you, right?
Yes.
They have premiums. They charge you a premium because they
Right.
can, right?
Right. That's right. So yes. So remember the government's buying these loans in order to keep the mortgage market liquid. So of course there's a premium to it. All good. There are lots of other mortgage products out there that are priced more competitively. And people do have choices depending, of course, on their credit score, on the amount that they're financing, and their debt to income ratio, and all kinds of other good stuff, including their down payment.
When you see somebody quote an interest rate, mm-hmm. just remember that is not the interest rate every single person is now paying that owns a house.
Right.
That's only people that are originating a loan right now. And that's only the rate if they're doing one of those products. So if you're doing a different kind of product, most of those by far have lower rates. Matter of fact, somebody told me they were recently quoted 5.8 or something on a 15-year fixed VA loan. Mm-hmm. They didn't have to put anything down. It was a 0% down.
Right, and depending on what market you're in, and if you're doing a VA loan, I believe the limit on VA loans is 4% that the seller can contribute to your closing costs, rate buy downs, whatever. So that's some money for you right there.
Okay, so we're going to talk a lot about that and how that actually affects housing market. Mm-hmm. Okay, here's first quote from the article. We got a great chart in here we're going to show you. The chart we're going to show you will show you that we're most of the way through this. Even though they're saying, oh, headwinds are going to persist, we are actually most of the way through this.
We are. I mean, look, we've been at these 7-ish, little under, little over, for about a year. So that's a pretty good bit of time, right? We've been in an increasing interest rate environment for about 18 months. So, we're certainly most of the way through this. The Fed has indicated, like Todd said, one more interest rate hike, and then probably some token interest rate reductions next year.
Okay, let's go through this. The affordability headwinds in the housing market will likely continue as the Federal Reserve signals that interest rates will remain at a higher level longer than previously expected, according to economists at Realtor.com. Mm-hmm. The Fed doesn't actually set mortgage rates. Mortgage rates are set by the market.
Correct.
The rates the Fed set mainly is going to affect credit cards, auto loans, student loans, things like that. Short-term rates.
Well, the Fed rates affect everything, right? I mean, because it all kind of percolates throughout the lending market. It's just a matter of the degree, right?
Okay, but like mortgage rates vary.
Mm-hmm.
It is an input to the let's put it this way, it's an input to the rate,
Yes.
but it's not the rate.
Correct.
Like the Federal Reserve would say mortgage rates today are X.
No, I mean, look, there are credit card interest rates out there at 30%
Yeah.
right now. So, I mean, clearly that's not the Fed's doing, but that's kind of what the market does with the input, to your point, of the Fed.
Let's talk about affordability. 98% of all people did not buy their house in the last year and a half.
That's correct.
Okay, 98% of all homes out there are either free and clear
Mm-hmm.
or, for the most part, have under 5% mortgage rates.
Correct.
Okay, we're in a market where the number of foreclosures is the lowest we've ever seen.
That's true.
Number of defaults is the lowest. These are like pre-foreclosures, lowest we've ever seen. Right?
True.
And the number of late payments on mortgages are the lowest since they've ever recorded.
That's true.
Okay. Why is it that people out there only focus on the exact rate today and people buying today and not the 98% of people that control the market? They're the ones that control what home prices sell for, and even if the home comes on the market. Because real estate for those people is ridiculously cheap because they either have a super low interest rate or they don't make a mortgage payment. So why do you think people are just focused on, they act like everybody, like nobody could afford all these rates, so everyone's going to have to get foreclosed?
People like drama.
Do you think that's it? I mean,
That's
do you
it.
think there's...
Look, people, have you seen the number of reality TV shows out there? Come on.
Yeah.
Yes, people like drama. And, these interest rates provide drama, and these stories that are amplified are dramatic. And that's why that's what the conversation revolves around. Look, the other 98% are boring, especially the 42% that own their homes free and clear. Those people are really boring. And the other 25 to 30% that owe less than 50% on their mortgage, those people are boring. So the only people that are really exciting and dramatic and interesting are the people who are, in the neighborhood of 6+ interest rate on their mortgages. And those are very few, and they're the ones getting attention. That's all there is to it.
Okay, let's talk about those people. Conventional wisdom is that those people are all going to, is any downturn in the market and they're wiped out, or anything uplift, the price of eggs goes up, whatever, right? Talk about, first of all, their qualification to get a loan, their debt to income ratios, right? Like their max payment versus their income, and then how much they have to put down. Because we're not in 2005 where they can just go out there and get a 125% loan with no credit.
Right. So today versus 2005, right? So 2005, if you fogged up a mirror, that was helpful but not necessary. Today, you have to be a well-qualified buyer. What does that mean? Back then versus today, it's about a 100-point difference in your credit score to qualify for a loan. Okay. So your credit score has to be 100 points higher today than it had to be in 2005. That by itself is pretty huge, right? Because what does your credit score indicate? It indicates a past history of responsibility, because that's what your credit score really is. It's a picture of your level of responsibility with your financial obligations. People then didn't have to put any money down. Not only that, but they would get loans that were 125% loan to value and actually put money in their pocket when they bought a house. Crazy time. Versus people today that have to put 20, 30% down. So people today are walking in with equity in their home because they had to put money down, versus people then who closed on a home and they were already upside down because they took money out. So those are some of the differences. To your point that we have the lowest level of people that are struggling to make payments, that are late on payments, that have pre-foreclosures or foreclosures. Yes, and that's absolutely true. Why? Because most mortgages out there are well below what you would rent a similar home for. So it makes a lot of sense that people are paying their mortgages, right? Not only that, but lenders have learned their lesson, and they are not quick to foreclose. They are quick to do workouts with borrowers to keep borrowers in their home and keep borrowers making payments. Those are important features that we didn't have back then, right?
Okay.
Something else to keep in mind, borrowers are far more likely to make that mortgage payment than to make other payments when they get into financial trouble, right? Because, as I always say, everybody has to have a roof over their head. And of course, their mortgage payment is going to be a whole lot less than a rent payment if they were to give up their home through any means. So they're much more likely to maybe miss a credit card payment or maybe a car payment or some other installment loan payment versus a mortgage payment. So that kind of has to be kept in mind. Those people that say, oh, as soon as there's a downturn in the economy, foreclosures are going to flood the market. Not so fast. Not so fast. So what's the first thing that people don't pay? Medical bills. Haha. Because those are easy to kind of brush off and go, they'll send me to collections, big deal. The next thing that they're not going to pay, credit card bills. Why? Well, because kind of same thing. What are they going to do about it? They're going to send me to collections. Good luck. And so on. So it's kind of an escalating thing, right? The mortgage payment is the last thing people are not going to pay, not the first thing. Okay. And the fact that the price of eggs goes up, that's nice, but not everybody's on a keto diet or an egg heavy diet, right? There are other things we can eat. And we talked about this on a recent video where we talked about, for example, the price of food. It is actually substantially less expensive today than it was in the past because we've had all kinds of innovations between transportation and refrigeration and that sort of thing. So, there is food out there. I'm not saying that there are not people out there who are food insecure, and I have the utmost sympathy for them, but I'm just saying by and large, this is where we are.
We did, it's funny, an article came out that said Las Vegas, Nevada, basically, leads the nation in foreclosures. But what they meant was filings, right, which a foreclosure filing means any filing in the step of the process. And when we dug into the numbers, the current level of notice of defaults were such, they actually are less than they were a year ago. They were 15% less than a year ago, but we're still number one, even though it's 15% less than a year ago. We did the math. Even at the current rate, in a year or two from now, which is about how long it would take these notice of defaults to end up being a trustee sale, if the normal rate of these homes going trustee sale, we would see about one foreclosure every 3 days in Las Vegas, and we lead the nation. Matter of fact, the article was funny because it talked about like the state of Texas or Illinois, and there were like 249 for the month of August, total in an entire state, which is literally zero, right?
Right.
So this idea that these things would cause foreclosures is not very likely. And like you said, Juan, because we're going to talk about renters here in a second. If you're a tenant, if you're renting a house, you may not buy, right? But tell me this. 37 or 8% of all people are tenants. Since when has them not being able to buy crashed the housing market?
Since never.
Okay, so it's not like they're like, oh, I'm not gonna go buy a house. The housing markets actually only crashed once. It crashed because of the subprime fiasco, the overbuilding, and then the subprime loans that people defaulted on them all. They just basically mass defaults, right?
Right.
People walked away from houses.
So really, I mean, when you distill it down, the market crashed because of poor lending practices. Because it was the poor lending practices that led to overbuilding because buyers saw an opportunity to sell their product. So when you really distill it, it had to do with poor lending practices.
Okay, here's another chart. Inflation over the decade. Now, what's interesting about this chart is this only goes to 2010. I think it's very interesting that they didn't go back further, because if they go back to the early 80s, it would have been off the chart above your screen, whatever you're watching on your phone, your iPad, your computer, TV. Would have been at the top, off the top, because we had 16, 17% inflation. Mortgage rates were 18%. Okay. A terrible economy, massive inflation, 18% interest rate in the late 70s, early 80s. What happened to home prices during that time?
They went up. You know what's really funny? And I'm sure a lot of you don't remember. Those of you that are more seasoned, we'll put it that way, maybe have some salt and pepper hair, might remember this. people were advertising their loan rate, not their house, when they were trying to sell their house. Because their loan rate sometimes was more valuable than the house because they were assumable loans. So that I just remember that being a very interesting contrast to how we advertise today. Because today we advertise, oh, I've got this, this many bedroom, this many bathroom, this much square footage, this is the size lot, pool, whatever, and I'm asking this much money for the house, right? That's not the way they did it back then. Because interest rates were 18% and change, people were advertising, I have a house and it's got a 12% interest rate. And then you'd call going, okay, tell me more about the house because you got my attention. So that's what was interesting back then.
Yeah, actually, they would put it in the paper. About 30% of all homes were sold basically through the newspaper. And you would say, hey, I have a 9.5% interest rate. Give me $10,000 and you can assume my loan.
Right.
And you would basically give them whatever equity they believe they had in the house, and then you would take over the house. You didn't want to originate you don't want to borrow new money at that rate.
Right.
Back then, almost all loans were assumable. The banks didn't really figure this out. It took them a while to figure out, hey, we're getting screwed because we've got these lower rates, lower than inflation, and people are just assuming them and keeping them. So a lot of banks got rid of those clauses, said they're non-assumable. Of course, FHA, VA, things like that, they have to have assumption clauses in them.
A lot of conventional loans are still assumable, you guys. So do check your loan documents. A lot of time it's in your deed that your loan is assumable, but do check. If you don't know, call your servicer and ask them if your loan is assumable. Most loans are assumable, but the buyer has to qualify. It is a little onerous process, and they will definitely slow walk you through it because remember, they're not incentivized to have somebody assume your 3% loan. They would rather that they originate a new loan. But there is a process, and most loans are assumable.
Okay, what's interesting about this chart? You can see that inflation is you can see where it's headed. It's heading lower. That little spike, that little blue spike all the way to the right, the light blue, that's the CPI. It did increase exclusively because of oil prices. Oil prices spiked. Oil prices went from like $70 to $90 a gallon. That's a huge increase.
Barrel, but yes.
I'm sorry, a barrel, not a gallon, a barrel. But if you look at the overall CPI, it declined. It says CPI not counting food and energy. And the reason they include food is because it takes energy to make food and transport the food. So making the food and moving the food requires a lot of energy, so it pushes up food costs. So they strip those out because that can turn on a dime. But you can see where this thing is going. And even if the Fed keeps rates high, inflation is inflation, and broader markets, bonds and lending, mortgage lending and everything is really trying to beat inflation, right? They're just trying to beat inflation. So we get inflation back down, and if you look at this, the CPI is down to just over 4%, not counting food and energy. So if you include food and energy, it's like 3.7%, 3.8, I think was the number. So you add a couple percent to that for risk, and interest rates are still going to be pretty high. But you get back down there to that 1-2%. You could see we were at almost 0%. We almost had disinflation, and that's when interest rates went to zero. But you could see where we're heading with this. So this idea that potentially rates could be high for a long time, in my opinion, and then I'll let you respond. We have two things. We have 98% of the people out there who really don't care what it costs to originate a loan, with the exception of now they can't sell their house and go get another one. They're just going to get locked in for a while, okay? The other thing is that we've been at high 6 to 7.5% for 11 months. And real estate has appreciated. And they're predicting, 4 to 5% by the end of 2024 for home prices. And a lot of that's because of this. It's because of inflation. It's their inflationary raises, not necessarily going up in real values. Wages are still going up though, right? And you can't really argue, this will be my last thing, that real estate's the most it's ever been, it has to go down. Wages are the highest they've ever been, and I demand they go down. I'm the CEO of major corporations that employ a ton of people, and wages have to crash because they're wages are overpriced. They've never been this high. This is ridiculous. I could have paid, 85 cents an hour in 1950 to a worker. Why do I have to pay him $12 an hour? This is ridiculous. Wages need to crash. Wages are the highest they've ever been. Guess what else is probably going to be the highest it's ever been? Every single thing you buy, including houses.
Well, so I'm the oldest I've ever been, so I demand that I be younger.
I demand it too. I would like to be a little younger. I'm actually going to film a video. I have a major milestone birthday coming up.
You do?
It's hard to tell with these terrible clothes on. I'm actually in really good shape. So I'm going to do a video where I do 20 pull-ups just like I did in the Marine Corps.
There you
And then
go.
we're going to put it on. I don't know if we'll put it on YouTube. We may. It depends on how bad it is. But we'll put it up probably on other social media. 60-year-old Marine doing pull-ups.
Okay. Well, so you've got quite a ways for your 60th birthday, so you've got time to get in shape.
Okay, tell them what your opinion is
Yes.
about, let's say rates stay high for another year before they drop. Oh, that thing where you can bet on rates. 74% of people said rates would be lower by September of next year.
Wow.
Significantly lower.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I've never done a pull-up, and I'm not going to.
No.
And I've already forgotten your
Talk about the higher, what it's like if lending, what's going to happen if this higher rate environment it persists a year or two, or what? How does that really change anything?
Okay, so a couple things. One, people are used to the higher interest rates. They've kind of gotten over this. As far as people who own homes, they have been making do. They've been, decluttering. They've been making room in other ways. They've been doing some home improvements, whatnot. That's great. They're going to get to a point where they're just going to go, you know what? Just like with the pandemic, they're just going to get on with it. They're just going to put their house on the market and go buy another one if that's what they have to do, or they're going to rent out their present house and go out and buy another one and just make it happen. Look, people are resilient. People adapt, and they're just going to get on with life. As far as inventory goes, I think what you're going to see is you might see actually more inventory toward the bottom. And here's why. You're going to have the people toward the bottom that have less savings, and they will require whatever whatever equity they have in the house in order to go to the next house. So it's the people in the middle that are going to be more likely to be more financially literate, to have more savings, and understand that this house that they own that has a great interest rate is actually a good investment for them, and they will move on to the next house without selling this one and renting it out. So I think it's going to be really interesting to watch that dynamic. Now, I'm not saying this applies to everybody, but I'm saying that generally speaking, the people at the bottom tend to have less savings and tend to be less financially literate than the people in the middle. And that's why I foresee this dynamic. Now, what does that mean to the rest of us? Well, it means that there will be opportunities for the rest of us to purchase some homes and maybe make some investments, right? We've talked about inflation, and inflation has generally been a good way to, at the very least, get par on your money, if not get some equity, and of course get some income from the rent. So real estate is one of the vehicles that people use to safeguard their money and to grow their wealth. Lots of people have put out that information. I'm not the only one. So, and I'm not pumping real estate. I'm simply saying it's just another investment vehicle. So there, you got my take on it. What did you think?
And no math.
And no math.
Didn't
Yay!
have to do any math.
Yeah. So I just gave you all kinds of thoughts that I have, whether you wanted to hear them or not. So now it's your turn. Give us your thoughts, whether we want to hear them or not, in the comments. We like engaging with you, so please leave us comments. You don't have to agree with us. You can express different opinions, particularly if you want to share where your information is coming from as far as any data. Please do that, because we do love to look at different data. Remember to like the video, subscribe, hit the notification bell, share the video, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.
Bye.